Welcome to the Upland Nation Podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. Really looking forward to talking with my friend Felton Jenkins and a bird that's a little less familiar to most of us, Hungarian partridge. We're going to recap a hunt we did together a couple weeks ago and some of the things we learned, some of the great dog work we had, and maybe it'll help you down the road if you're thinking about, well, coming out to the West, or if you're in the West and you're looking for a new species. Hopefully you'll learn something. We sure did, and we had a good time as well. Interesting way to get where we got, but I'll tell you about that as we get deeper into the podcast. Happy New Year. Thank you if you filled in my Upland Nation Index survey. Appreciate that. If you're looking for public land, walk-in land, we'll cover a little bit of that as well. Wild bird hunting is what we're all about here. But that's not all we're talking about. We'll have your New Year's resolutions, a new Upland Nation Puzzler, question and a prize. And it's all made possible by RuffLand Performance Kennels, Happy Jack dog care products, Sage and Breaker gun care products, Pointer shotguns from Legacy Sports, Dr. Tim's Natural Performance Dog Food, and MidValleyClays.com. We've been snowed in here, just a little bit too cold for the dogs and for the dog's owner. Plus access out here, where I go at least, is a little bit tough when you get a foot or two of snow on the ground. You may get in, but you probably won't get out again. So we've been working on all the things that you work on when you can't hunt. Getting gear all cleaned up and ready to go. Getting the trailer back into shape. Actually going to the range once or twice. And did I tell you? I think I did. I've gone away from trying to close my eye while I'm mounting the gun and shoot right-eyed and gone back to the shooting glasses with a patch over them. So back to the drawing board once again. We are brought to you in part by Sage and Breaker gun care products. These products are crafted at the highest caliber. Heirloom level products that you will pass on, and if you gift somebody with one, you will be on their nice list next Christmas, believe me. Sign up for the mailing list at sageandbreaker.com. Not only will you get first notice of any of the rare sales, but you'll also get first notice of any new products coming down the pipeline. sageandbreaker.com. And legacysports.com is where you learn all about pointer shotguns. If you're looking for value and quality, take a look at these pointer shotguns at legacysports.com. Fit and finish as good as anything I've seen. If you're looking for a starter gun for a kid, you're looking to upgrade from something else to an over and under, or if you're looking for a semi-automatic, they've got them all beautifully made. The value, incredible. And did I tell you? You can spec the color of the barrel in the action. Olive drab, gray, bronze, regular blued, steel, it's all there in all those varieties. It's all at legacysports.com. Then just hit the brands page and go to pointers. Welcome to the Upland Nation Podcast, my good friend Felton Jenkins. How you doing these days?
Oh, good, Scott. How are you?
I am having a good day. Once again, the knees are in good shape. I'm ready for the next hunt if the snow would just go away. But since I saw you've been out at least one more time. How'd that go?
Yeah, I think I've been out twice. Both were kind of half-day hunts. Found one chucker that Dean held really close and had a good close flush. And with a shot, I put the landing gear on the bird down, dropped a couple of legs, but he was so close to a cliff that he kept sailing on out of sight. And when we got to the edge of where we were, it was a new place. There were way too many rocks for either Dean or I to go down. So we lost that bird. And then actually Christmas Day, we went for a hike up above a river you've heard of probably, and went way up. Found a couple of coveys. One was way too far down for me to get to before the birds went on, and I couldn't see what happened really. And then we had another great point that I could see him, but there was a big canyon, steep draw in between us, so I had to go hike around and then around and back down to him, and it took at least 10 minutes, but he held it super. And then when I got probably within 30 yards, the chuckers flushed, but I was just so happy they were still there. And but it was too. I did one Hail Mary shot, and but Dean did a good job, but we couldn't bring anything home that day. But we had a great hike, and the weather was good.
Yeah, good to hear that. And yes, I was supposed to be in that same general area not a few days after you, but we blew it off thanks to the weather. I was going with our mutual friend Mark, who we'll talk about a little bit later on as well.
Yeah.
But you and I met kind of through the podcast. Now that I think about it, tell me more about how this whole thing got started.
Yeah, well, I started stalking and trolling you on the internet. No, I'm kidding. But I found somehow I got to find birdhuntingspots.com and emailed you with a couple of questions. I was going somewhere far away from home and just needed what county or watershed should I look at, and you gave me a couple of ideas, and I said, well, hey, I will show you a spot or try to take you to a spot where I think there's some Hungarian partridge that you might not know about. And so we kept in touch that way, and I don't think we were able to do it. No, we did do it. We did it one time last year.
Yeah.
And then we did it just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and they were both fun. Wonderful.
And they were two different spots, but in the same general area, as you know.
I do know, and you know what I do appreciate most about all of this. Number one, your friendship. Number two, you're showing me places that anybody willing to do a little bit of homework could find on their own and take advantage of. These are all, in one way or another, public access or walk-in or public agency-owned land, whatever it is. And I'm learning a lot about that kind of stuff every year, but in particular, this year it's been driven home in any number of ways. But this last time we got together, you showed me some ground that up until a year ago, I probably would have said, Hungarian partridge? No, that's like chucker light country. And I call it light, Lite, because it's, it's steep, but it's not as steep as a chucker hunt. It's got rocks, but they're not as big as chucker rocks. And it's got, bunch grass and other kinds of weeds and grasses primarily, but they're shorter than a lot of the places where I find chuckers. And finally, there's no sagebrush.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no sagebrush to trip over or have to lose your dog in or any of that kind of stuff. So it's pretty civilized territory, in this part of the world, I think. Yeah,
especially for people who are used to slightly worse than that. It is one of those places like the Dakotas where you can watch your dog run away for 3 days, and if you have a tuna fish can, you can stand on that and watch him run away for a week. So it's wonderful in that regard, but the others. There were so many highlights. So, and we're just going to focus on Saturday.
Okay.
But for one other item, and actually, let's start with it. So we hunted all day Sunday, and we'll get more into that later on another discussion or somewhere down the road. But our friend Mark showed us a place, and we hunted hard. Well, we didn't hunt that hard. We hunted a lot of country, and we were lucky enough to be chauffeured around in his side-by-side. But
right.
The highlight for me was, I trust the highlight for you, and that is we're working the last bit of cover on the downhill side of a wicked draw. really thick, and Flick is doing all the work. Yeah, you guys are effectively blocking at the bottom of this little creek bottom, and me and Flick are coming down towards you guys, and up along my right, bump, 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 is a ringneck trying to get out of that creek bottom before Flick goes after him. And he's bouncing off the sheer wall as he gets towards the top. He hits that top and squirts out of sight to me, but not to you. Tell me the rest of that story.
Yeah. So, we got up a few hens, not Huns, but hen pheasants before. And, I'm colorblind like you, and I'm blind in one eye, which is worse than you. And I'm not crazy about pheasant hunting because they just run away from Dean when he gets close. But Flick worked so close. That was, I guess what a versatile dog is supposed to do. But anyway, the hens flew away. I couldn't tell what they were, but they went the other side from where I was. And then at the end, you got up that rooster. Flick got up the rooster, and lucky for me, unlucky for the rooster, he flew, to my side versus Mark's side, and flew to the left of me, and I was on the, I guess the left side if you're looking up the creek, and had a good line on him, swinging from right to the left, which is good for me, and I got hit him with the first shot, and he slowed down, but not much, and then I hit him with a second shot, knocked him down, hit the ground pretty hard, I thought. And then he took off running at 90 miles an hour. And luckily Flick was right on his tail and was able to get a hold of him. But I hadn't seen a pheasant do that before because I hadn't hunted that many pheasants. And like I told you, that was my first wild rooster pheasant, which was real exciting. So that made the day, a super day.
It did. In fact, when you were describing that to me, when you told me that was your first wild bird, I was looking at the ring on that bird's neck, and I swear it got whiter and wider just from that story. And I'm so glad we were there to share it with you. It was spectacular. And yeah, Flick, he did a pretty good job chasing down that runner. I was pretty proud of him after that.
Yeah, me too, because that would have been a shame to watch him run over the hill.
Oh, and he could have. I think he had the legs for it. So that was the next day. But we're going to get back to this because this is such a fantastic day for me for a whole bunch of reasons, and I trust for you too, except when I slowed you down on some of those really bad hills. But this is part of the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's access program, and it's a big cattle ranch. Effectively, that's what it is. But these places are so big, and they have so much ground and so much great habitat if you know what to look for. But all of that started with you telling me to not forget to bring my mountain bike.
Yeah, because the first time I scouted over there, because it was close to a place, my friend Dennis Carlson, who I could go into how he saved the day when Dean and I started hunting 4 years ago, and Dean's my first pointing dog. But the gate was open the first time I went there to scout, but you really weren't supposed to drive in there, and I didn't see the sign because the gate was open, but it says no motorized vehicles. And the next time I came back that I wanted to hunt it, I was going to expect that I could drive up that road, but then I got to it and it was locked, and no motorized vehicles, and you can access some good ground just hiking from there. But I was like, if I brought my bike and my bike trailer, I could get pretty far up in there because it's a long ranch road that goes up into the eventually in the higher country. And so I came back with the mountain bike and the trailer, and we found quite a few coveys, and that was last year. And so I wanted to get you up there this year and try the mountain bike attack, and it was all right, wasn't it?
It was, I mean, beyond the novelty of riding your bike on a hunt. And some of the big game guys are doing it. And actually, there's a couple spots where some of the chucker hunters are doing it now. But that was the first time for me. And boy, am I glad you brought your trailer, because you got to carry all the heavy stuff in that. It was incredible. And I recommend it to anybody these days, because just think about it. Just think if all you need to do is get 2 or 3 miles farther in than everybody else, and that's where you start. Oh man, the opportunities. It's kind of the poor man's side by side. I like to think that if you're an ethical bird hunter, you drive in on what's left of a road, you park your side by side and hunt from there. So it's much the same in that regard. And as we're finding more and more, especially on public access ground, the deeper you go, the better your chances are. So we park this thing and we go hunting.
As far as the stuff in the cart in the trailer, I wanted to ask you if one of your tin essentials was a brick.
No, but I did put 9 boxes of heavy shot in there. So it was worse than that.
Yeah, we had plenty of shells and plenty of water, and we needed some of that water. We didn't need all the shells, but park. There's a shed there. We park, and then there's a little rocky climb to get up from the first road, and then we were off.
And, the first thing I thought about was the kind of the almost rule when it comes to Hungarian partridge, and that is get to the level spots on the top of the ridges if you can, and see what happens. And we were doing that, and we weren't having a whole lot of luck. And then all of a sudden, your dog, Dean, the English setter, slams a point, and he's maybe 100 yards below us, down towards, not at the bottom, but towards the bottom of one of the draws. Mm-hmm. And I know part of it is you're being humble, but it was a beautiful point. It was a great find in a spot where we should have probably had better luck than we did. But, after we caught our breath and admired him for a while, we started moseying down there. And the problem with that short cover is the birds can see us well in advance of us seeing them, I think, even in a spot like that. And then they see Flick coming in from the other side. And, here's a dilemma. And everybody out there with a pointing dog or hunting with somebody else's dog and their own dog together, this is the dilemma I face. Do you yell at your dog, slam him into a whoa, and risk scaring those birds with your yelling? Or do you just cross your fingers and hope it's going to work out? And I've done this on occasion, somebody else's dog goes on point. I bring my dog the other way just so that I don't spoil it for my friend. None of those things were tried. Flick came in, and I think, as you well pointed out, and this is probably just a matter of more practice and more practice, Dean sees Flick coming in, knowing Flick's going to blow the whole thing up. So he maybe creeps a bit. Is that what happened there? I'm trying to remember what got those birds in the air.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, we hiked up, and for a long time, I didn't have a signal on him.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up 100 or 200 yards up above him, and we were on, coming over that ridge to where we could see that draw down there. But yeah, he was doing a great job holding it, and then. We got closer, and Flick got closer too, but Dean's never hunted. Flick is the only other true pointing dog that Dean's hunted with. Uh-huh. So he doesn't have practice being out there with another dog. Yeah. We've had a couple of labs walk around. Friend that had a lab just walk around and not really interfere. Although Dean got competitive on the retrieve, and that's the only time he's bitten into a bird is when he was trying to get ahead of the lab on retrieve. So I think that was part of it. But we kept on hunting, and we had a few more finds.
We did knock wood, and here out of that first find, here's a lesson that we always talk about when it comes to chukar hunting, and I never talked about it with Huns until you and I were together that last couple weeks ago. You wanted to get back up to the top of that ridge, and I thought, number one, I don't want to climb that damn thing again. Number two, if the birds are down here, I wonder if there are more birds down here. And we sort of stayed at that level, and sure enough, within another few minutes, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, Flick's collar tells me he's on point. And we had everything going for us right that time. We knew about where he was. I don't think we could see him from there, but we knew about where he was. We come around a little bump, and there he is, slammed on a point on a little rock pile, looking at us, we think.
Yeah.
He's not looking at us. He's, he had done and he did this again on the same trip with Mark later in the weekend. He had gone out because the wind was at his back, and he was working back into the wind, hit the birds, locked up, and waited for us. And I'll tell you, the things that I thought about when he was on point were these. First off, wow, wasn't that great? He figured out how to come back and work into the wind. Number two, once he saw us, even though we were 150 yards away, he knew to him, I'm trying to train him that's a signal to hold still.
Right.
Instead of just yelling, whoa, or putting your hand up or all those other things, that's another one. When you see the handler come into view, it's an obedience command. Stop. Do not crash into the birds. Well, he did all that. And on that covey, we finally caught up to it. We squeezed him between us and him. Birds got up almost in textbook fashion. Most of them went down to our right, which, like you said, is your better side. For me, that's the worst side for shooting. But we both dropped a bird on that covey, didn't we?
Yeah, that was pretty good. And since you shot once, that meant I had to have hit one of them. So that was a good thing. So that was exciting. And I think Dean was up the ridge doing his own searching. So we didn't have to worry about Dean backing or Flick not getting distracted. So that was a plus, I think, for the setup. I'm
knocking wood as I say it. And then the funniest part about all that was he got one bird, and he's bringing it back to me. He'll never bring a bird back to anybody. I don't care who shoots it. I get all the birds.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's another obedience thing I taught him.
Yeah.
But so he brings it back, and about halfway up that hill, he senses the other bird, and he looks at it. He finds it, sees it. It's got one in his mouth, and for that microsecond, you could see his brain working. Can I fit them both in?
Yeah.
And he says, nah. And luckily, he didn't swap them out. I've seen him do that before, too. But it was fun. Hey, you're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. I know it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like just me and Felton Jenkins are having a great time here. I'm Scott Linden. We're talking Hungarian partridge, and that is a perfect textbook example of where they were. Flick he had each foot on a different rock, and the rocks were, a softball to watermelon size, no bigger than that. And that's where we found birds over and over again on that hunt that day. They were in little rocky spots that, they weren't hiding behind rocks. They were hiding among the rocks that were really about their size most of the time. What else did we learn from that find or some of the others we had out there?
Yeah, when you said that among the rocks, it just reminded me of something else. I've said that, those Huns, they blend in so well.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for Dean or Flick, I like to say that I wouldn't see a Hungarian partridge if it was alive or dead, because I can't find them. And that's why it's so great to have a pointing dog like we do.
Oh yeah.
So, and what else did we learn after that? We should, keep working up the draw and not go too far up or too far down. But you found some a little bit a little bit down from where we were, didn't you?
Yeah, hold that thought, because that's a good lesson in itself, based on what you just said. And we'll get to that in a moment. I'm gonna take a quick break here and remind people of who makes this all possible. Felton, you've got 90 seconds to relax. This is the Upland Nation podcast, and we are brought to you in part by Dr. Tim's Performance Dog Food. Take a look at the videos on my where am I? On my YouTube channel. Got a lot of them thanks to Dr. Tim Hunt and his information there. If you'd like more information on his performance dog food varieties, go to drtims.com. Read about the types of protein and the types of fat he uses and why he uses them. The guy knows of what he speaks. He's a sled dog competitor. He's a veterinarian, and he's a scientist. This guy knows his stuff. Free delivery on your orders and 30% off your first order if you just use the code uplandnation.com. And we're also brought to you by happyjackinc.com, happyjackinc.com. Save yourself to a trip to the vet once in a while. Just got off the phone with a good friend who luckily had all the stuff he needed when some mean old terrier tore into his Griffon on a hunting trip. But he was able to take care of all the things he needed to do because he had all the products he needed in his dog bag back at the truck. You can fix everything from flea and tick to scrapes and cuts to pad health. It's all there, as well as Flex Enhance Plus. That's what I use to keep my dogs arthritis free. That's right. Creatine and glucosamine are contained in Flex Enhance Plus. Learn more about it at happyjackinc.com. And welcome back. This is the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. In your left speaker, in your right speaker or earbud is my friend and hunting buddy, Felton Jenkins. Felton, welcome back.
Thanks, Scott. I went to go work on my appearance in the mirror.
Yeah, because you do have a face for radio.
You're right, exactly. My mom told me that.
And everybody tells me that. Although I got to tell you this, when I was first in radio and doing stuff on the local level, some woman accosted me in the grocery store, and she said, "Oh, you're that guy. He's on the radio every morning, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Yeah, I am." She says, "Funny, you sound taller on the radio."
Well, you're pretty tall.
Yeah, but not. But that's the joy of radio. You can sound better looking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this morning I put on my cleanest dirty shirt.
Which is a great line from a Chris Christopherson song.
That's right.
But we'll get into that some other day.
Yeah.
And let me remind everybody, we still got a whole bunch coming up. I got a new Upland Nation Puzzler, a quiz question for you, and we're going to share some of your own New Year's resolutions as well. But first, let's get back to that hunt and that the lesson we learned when I said, I don't want to climb back up to the top of that ridge because, why are we leaving Hun level to find Huns? Let's walk parallel. Let's side hill this canyon the rest of the way and see what happens. And sure enough, you were, maybe 100 yards above me, if that. And I'm walking along, and I got my side by side over my shoulder, broken open, and son of a gun, if I don't jump a covey wild literally at my feet. They all get up. I'm so slow on the draw. I get my gun put back together and I'm ready to shoot, but they're all, ancient history by then. But like so many other covey birds, there's always one either slow learner or brave bird. And I knew that bird was somewhere in the vicinity. And he was. He was the outlier. Literally, he was another 8 or 10 yards away from where the whole covey got up. But he got up and luckily flew the right way. I shot and missed. So I thought.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep hunting, and we're still walking up that slope. And Flick, who was 200 yards away watching all the action. You know, maybe he thought it was coffee break time. He doesn't look at me anymore. He doesn't look at Dean anymore. He heads for one solitary bitter brush or whatever it was on the other side of that draw towards the bottom. And I know better now anymore, you know, like they say, trust the dog. He gets to that bush and there's a little rattling and a little rustling, and you know your dogs, don't you? You know, when he does a certain thing or two and his head does that and his tail does that, he's putting something in his mouth. And sure enough, he comes back up that hill with that Hungarian partridge that I thought I'd missed. And,
well, that's a good deal.
You know, I don't know how they know it, but somehow they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes I've thought I maybe knocked two birds down, and I know I knocked one bird down and thought I hit another one that went down. And so Dean finds the first bird, and then I'm like, no, we don't want to leave, Dean. Keep looking. And he'll cover the area, you know, for 30 seconds for a minute, and then he's ready to take off and go hunting again. And I'm like, no, come on back. Let's check this area some more. But he's already determined that there's not another bird on the ground there. It's either run off or I missed it. So yeah, you got to trust the dog and trust the nose, right? Yeah.
You know, I only wish that my dog would do in the real world what he does when we practice that kind of stuff. I do like to be able to guide him in and to hunt dead a little bit more, with a little bit more earnestness than he usually does. He's like Dean. You know, pointing dogs, I think in general, would much rather go find more live birds than look for a dead bird. So
yeah, good point.
So I got another project for this spring and summer, but it was fun and it was gratifying, and it went on and on and on like that. What about, you know, that day alone, if you had to isolate it to that day, what stuck out in your mind as maybe one of the highlights?
Well, what you mentioned about that first point that Flick had that we were successful on, so that was definitely a highlight. And then we had a few other points up the draw, and we didn't do as well on those, but there were definitely birds up there. We saw some.
Yep.
And then we did go up over a ridge to keep going the loop that I wanted to do. And out there, I'd found birds like you're talking about up on the ridges.
Yeah, where that big rock pile was, in fact.
Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah. And we kept going, but except for maybe that one that was up top, most of them were on the sides of the hill, right?
Yeah, we did get another great piece of dog work from Dean on almost to the top ones. It was cold, it was windy, it was starting to rain, I think. But he slammed a point, and we were below him at that time, and we started working our way up. And I know you were a little upset, but I think it was more the bird's fault than anybody else's. He was holding those birds pretty well, and they might have been more hinky than we thought because they were on bare ground. And again, like you, I didn't see them until they flew away.
Yeah.
But
that's true.
He found a number of birds that we couldn't get to in time, and I don't know that I'd fault any dog for any of that. I think this is when you're hunting wild birds in wild country with low cover. I think those are the risks you run, and you just gotta just accept that. I did do one thing. I'm pretty proud of this. I'm trying to do it more and more often these days. We got another point. I think it was from Flick on another kind of rocky spot, and they all flew your way, and we both shot, and we both, of course, missed with skill and accuracy. There's an art to that as well. But I did one thing, because again, it was one of those, okay, he's on point, but he's 244 yards away and it's uphill. So we get up there and we get there in time. And I think we even had our feet set in the right place and all of that. And then boom, they get up and they all go hard right to left. But to reward Flick, I either borrowed one of yours or I had one in my own bag. I threw one of those dead Huns out and let him think we'd shot it. And I learned that a long time ago from Brad Higgins down in Yerington, Nevada, and I thank him for that over and over again. A lot of you already know how I feel about that theory. I think dogs need rewards, and the best reward for a bird dog is a bird. So anyhow, it was pretty incredible. Let me just paint a picture of these places. There, imagine a blanket on your bed. It's kind of cheatgrass colored. What color would that be, Felton? Would you call that brown?
Yeah, brown and green and gray. They sometimes blend together for me.
That's right. Who are we? Two colorblind guys trying to describe this place. Anyway, imagine that, and imagine that you then take both sides of that blanket and you scrunch them towards the middle. So you got this whole kind of set of rolling knife edge. At the top, they're pretty sharp, the edges of these peaks and valleys. And so the choices are, do you go over and down and over and down and over and down, or do you go up one and then down the next? And the challenges there are pretty interesting. The walking was better than some. It was not bad, but the effects of the drought, even up there, I think were pretty apparent. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I think I noticed it earlier in the season going for chuckers, and there's just not much ground cover, and they could see Dean and I coming from a mile away, I'm sure, and so it was really hard to pin some birds down and get a point, on chuckers earlier in the season, and we did have better luck in January, which was the first time I really biked that far up, was last January, and we had 2 different days, and I got 7 Huns each day, and so Dean held them really well that time, a year ago, and maybe it was the less cover that's out there this year because of the drought.
Yeah,
and so I think there's something to that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think I've seen that almost everywhere I've been in the West this season. The cover is a little skinnier. The number of birds matches that. I'm hearing that I didn't go to South Dakota this year, but I heard the same thing over there. I was in Montana, and we saw the same thing. Places that usually had knee-high grass had ankle-high grass, and that's on the stuff that wasn't mowed. A lot of those emergency haying rules allowed them to mow CRP ground. So it was all of that, and then even at this point in time, we didn't see much in the way of green feed out there, did we?
No, there wasn't a whole lot of green stuff. Did we check a crop? I can't remember.
Oh, I was hoping you would say you did, because I can't remember either. Oh, the birds I shot?
Yeah.
Empty crops.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the bird that I brought home, what it had, because I brought home that Hun and the pheasant, and I can't remember. I can't remember checking.
And it was later in the these. Well, I shouldn't say that. The birds we actually shot were early, mid morning or thereabouts. So by then maybe they were just starting to feed, but the only feed out there is what's left of the cheatgrass seeds, and then a little bit of cheatgrass green shoots coming up, but there wasn't a lot of that, and I can't think of anything else they might be eating out there. There's not even any sage, so it's not like they're nibbling on sage leaves or anything. But,
well, they're finding something, because we saw plenty. We saw good numbers, and I've seen good numbers of chucker in a couple of different spots, but they're smarter and warier this year, I think, than the last couple of years.
I tend to agree, and I'll tell you, the top line, what I took away from that trip was, Hungarian partridge have mystified me for my entire hunting career. The ones I've shot have been, I thought, all in classic Hungarian partridge country, rolling green hills, usually in Montana. But last year and this year both, I found Huns in country that you would, just looking at it, call chucker country, or maybe quail country. In fact, it was funny. There were no quail in any of those bottoms of those draws either. But
no, I haven't found quail or pheasants in that particular area.
Yeah.
Just the and Huns are kind of a bonus when you're chucker hunting. In this area, the chuckers are a bonus, and the Huns are what I expect to find now. And the one time I went to hunt in Montana in conjunction with a deer hunt, we didn't find any Huns or we saw some grouse running away from us, but that was an even a worse reproduction year than they've had in a long time. I guess that was 2 or 3 years ago.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
That's the joy of this game, I guess, is you never know. And you probably ought to carry a different load in your right barrel from your left barrel, or however you're loading whatever kind of gun you're using, because you never know what's going to get up. And sure enough, the next day and the next day, it was true for me and for you and for Mark as well. On Monday, we had some interesting times there as well. I want to leave our discussion with what I think might have been actually the real highlight of that whole trip, and that was, I was down there in my travel trailer. You were at the local motel, and our friend Mark was up the road 30 miles at his place, and sure enough, he knew where I was, and you knew where I was. And the first morning you and I were to get together, Mark showed up first. So we got to spend a little time together, and then the next day he showed up again, and he said, "Where are you going?" We said, "Well, we were thinking about over there," and he said, "Well, how about this over here?" And we said, "Sure." And those are the kind of things that happen just on the spur of the moment. I'm not that kind of guy. I never was a great jazz musician because I needed everything plotted out better.
Mm-hmm.
I could read notes good, but I couldn't fake notes very well. But that kind of stuff just happens when you put 2 or 3 guys together who share the same passion, I guess. It happens more than we think, and I'm glad it happened for you and me. It's been spectacular. Felton Jenkins, thanks for inviting me along on the ride. Hope I can return the favor someday. We'll go down to that spot a lot farther south and east from you, but you're going to have to allow for a couple more days of travel on that one.
Yeah. Hey, let me, one more highlight I was thinking about was the last point we had, and that Dean had. He did let us get in close. A couple of birds got up. We weren't close enough. We didn't have a good shot on those, but he stayed in place, and we got to go in and get those 2 scraggler birds that were still in there.
That's right.
And they got up way too far, not in front of me, but way to my left. So I didn't really see them get up. And by the time I swung over on them, they were going over the ridge. But I was happy with how it ended that way, with him staying a lot steadier on that last point, even though we didn't get the birds.
We were talking about that. We were talking about that over pizza that night, I think, and I think we took a vote, you and me, and we decided it was unanimous that, to make a great day in the field, it only takes 1 or 2 things. And there was one for Dean. Flick had one. We actually hit a couple birds. We saw some great country. That was a whole bunch of things, but once in a while, if nothing else, if you get one little piece of dog work that just dazzles you that day, that's enough, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot. I mean, how many times do we go out and hike and don't really get to shoot anything?
Yeah.
It's kind of like steelhead fishing. Plenty of times you go out and swing flies for steelhead for hours, and you maybe don't get a grab at all. The other thing that was fun, it was a lot funner riding downhill to go back to the vehicles than it was to walk 2.5 miles.
Yeah, you're right. I'm feeling it right now. There's a certain feeling in the soles of your feet after a long day climbing those dang hills. We didn't have to have it because we were pedaling instead of stomping all the way back.
Yeah. And we got to stay out until, closer to dark. And, it's a lot easier riding downhill than riding uphill or walking, any direction. So, it's fun. You don't mind walking in and walking around and hunting, but when you get back and you got to walk back 3 miles on a gravel road, that gets kind of old at night.
Yeah. But God bless the dogs. They paced us the whole way out, the whole way back. They were running along while we were riding. I mean, think about that. And we put, I think the dogs did about, I don't know. Do you remember what we figured out on the GPS? They did about 13 or 14 miles. And they were.
I think. What I didn't track that day, but when I've done that hunt before, I think it was about 6 miles 5 or 6 miles that we did.
Yeah.
And they do 3 or 4 times that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they covered 15 or 20 miles.
Not at all.
Each of them.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's that kind of country again, now we've come full circle. We'll do it again. And I'll take you to one of my spots where there is sagebrush and the birds are slightly bigger, but no easier to hit. We'll do that. We'll do that either later this season if we get any decent weather, or definitely next season. Felton Jenkins, always good to talk with you by phone or in the field. Thank Dean. Give him an extra kibble for me tonight. He did a great job. And thanks for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Scott. It was my pleasure, and Happy New Year.
Same back at you. Oh, boy. Always fun. You stick around. I've got the new puzzler and a quiz for you coming right up, as well as your New Year's resolutions. Yeah, yours this week, and then sometime very soon afterwards, we'll do your dog's New Year's resolutions. So don't go away, as they say. This part of the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you by RuffLandKennels.com, R-U-F-F, landkennels.com. They pioneered the performance roto-molded dog crate. These folks know what they're talking about. They've got dealers all over the country, and you can order online as well. Go to their website, RuffLandKennels.com, and search for a nearby dealer or order it online. New boxes with a door on the side. That's what I just got, so that I can put Flick in from the front or the side, depending on where I am and where he is at the time. I love that aspect. You can spec your dog box any way you like and any color you like. And if you got a SUV and you got a little problem with room, they make a slant back version of the RuffLand kennel as well. And if you're searching for advice, information, or a new shotgun, check out midvalleyclays.com. They're located in Western Oregon, so if you're going up and down the coast for some reason, pull in and take a look at their incredible shooting facility. Anything you want to shoot at that involves a clay target, they've got it there. You maybe saw that. We made the pilot for a clay target shootout there many years ago. It's gotten better and better under the leadership of Dave Fiedler and Chris Greenwood and the crew over there at midvalleyclays.com. More importantly, certified instructors can get you into the right gun, get you into the stock of that gun so you're hitting more targets. They got an RV park. You can stay for a couple days and try out a bunch of new guns, see what fits you best, what works for you the best. It's all at midvalleyclays.com. All right, I promised you a new Upland Nation Puzzler question. The prize for the end of January will be a very rare, one might call it a limited edition, Scott Linden Signature Series Real Bird Bumper. Yeah, you can't buy them anymore. I'm pulling one out of my personal stash to award to somebody who gives me the correct answer to one of the questions I ask in January. This week, message me on Facebook with the right answer, and you're entered to win that Real Bird Bumper. Here it is. What is the common name for the dog breed known in most of Europe as Épagneul Breton? Espagnol Breton. Look it up. Starts with an E, starts with a B. What is the common name in America for that dog? Good luck on that. And now I will share some things that this is always fun and always a learning experience for me, maybe for you. Here we are on Facebook again. And I asked you there what your New Year's resolutions were. So let's just take a look at George Cummins, always a good one. George wants a couple more titles for his Weimaraner, Samson, and to hunt new places. Okay, I'm all for that. Maybe I'll see you at one of those. Steve Fryer, what'd you do? Steal that line from me? He wants to be a better shot for his hunting partner, and he's got a beautiful black and white short hair in the photo. Interesting markings. Think about a short hair that's all white on the body, all black on the head, and then the right side of his butt and right leg are black. Beautiful. I think they'd call that flashy in the show ring. Jerry Zeich, your goal, your New Year's resolution, to retire in 2022. Okay, good luck on that one. Lance Larson, my good friend and consummate wood carver, he wants to spend as much time as possible with his dogs. David Thomas Jr. has the same need that I do, to be a better shot for Shady, the German Shorthair, and Harlan, the Dratar. Great picture. Thank you for putting the fuzzy-faced dog in the foreground there, although they're both really good-looking dogs. I love that shot. Looks like grouse country to me. A lot of popple-looking, standy-uppy aspens, maybe? Can't tell. There's no leaves on them. Steve Robbins wants to do two things in this order. It's the only way anybody I know is going to pull it off. First, win Powerball. Second, hunt more. And finally, Kent Baxter says, enjoy all the blessings I've been given. Training dogs 5 months out of the year, hunting 2 to 3 days each week during the season, and really enjoying my new pup this coming spring. Great answers from all of you. If you haven't made your resolutions, it's not too late. And while you're at it, don't forget to get your new hunting license as well. Yeah. You are going to need it very soon. Well, that was brought to you by FindBirdHuntingSpots.com. That's my website. That's where you can always find something new to help you hunt, train, care for your dog. Lots of places that you might not have thought about. This week, a new blog post, article called 5 Big Mistakes We Make with Our Dogs. Maybe you don't. Okay, I do. All right. That's why I wrote it. It was therapy for me. Maybe it will be for you as well. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, please tell your friends and give us a good review if you think I deserve it, that is, at Apple Podcasts or any place else you subscribe. Check in the Wing Shooting USA and the Upland Nation Facebook pages anytime you want. Thank you to those who have already left ratings and reviews. I sure appreciate that. Another Happy New Year to everybody, and I'll leave you with this from author Edward Hoagland. He says, in order to really enjoy a dog, one doesn't merely try to train him to be semi-human. The point of it is to open oneself to the possibility of becoming partly a dog. Amen to that. Thanks again for listening. Until I see you here again, maybe I'll see you in the field.